This is a presentation from my channel. The winter of 1692 was unforgiving. Snow covered the ground in thick, heavy sheets. The wind howled through the bare trees of Salem village, and in the homes of the Puritans, fear was quietly growing. This was a community built on strict rules, hard work, and deep religious belief. They thought of themselves as God's chosen people, living in a dangerous new world, surrounded by wilderness. And they believed that in those woods the devil himself was waiting, began quietly. In the home of Reverend Samuel Parris, his young daughter Betty and his niece Abigail began to act strangely. They screamed without reason, their bodies twisted in unnatural ways. And they claimed invisible hands were pinching them, choking them, pulling at their hair. No doctor could explain it. So the villagers looked for another cause, a darker cause, and they found it in witchcraft. Soon, other young girls began showing the same symptoms. They said spirits were attacking them, whispering in their ears, scratching their skin. Their words spread through the village like fire in dry grass. The first to be accused were women on the edges of society. Sarah Good, a homeless beggar. Sarah Osborne, an elderly woman who rarely came to church. And Tituba, an enslaved woman of Caribbean descent who worked for Reverend Parris. The accusations were enough to bring them before the magistrates, and under pressure Tituba confessed. She told stories of black dogs, red cats, and a book filled with the names of witches written in blood. She said there were others working with the devil in Salem. Her words poured oil on the fire. The villagers now believed beyond any doubt that evil was in their midst. More accusations followed. Friends accused friends, neighbors accused neighbors, even respected members of the community found themselves in chains. The court allowed something called spectral evidence, where a witness could claim they saw a person, spirit doing harm even if the person's body was somewhere else. It was impossible to prove innocence. If you denied being a witch, they said it was the devil speaking through you. If you confessed, you were branded as guilty anyway. By the end of 1692, more than 200 people were accused. 19 were hanged on Gallows Hill. One man, Giles Corey, refused to speak at all. They pressed him under heavy stones until he died. His final words were said to be, "More wait." For others died in prison waiting for trials that would never come. The hysteria only ended when the accusations reached too far. When the governor's own wife was accused, he stepped in. The special court was dissolved. And in May of 1693, the last prisoners were released. The Salem witch trials remain one of the darkest chapters in American history. A time when fear replaced reason, when superstition silenced truth, and when the innocent paid the price for a community's panic. Even today, the name Salem is a warning, a reminder of how quickly suspicion can spread, and how easily people can turn against each other when fear takes hold. Now let's put this event into context. Why did this happen? What were the causes? Why was it so deadly? Here are some points to consider. First, the Puritans believed they were living in a world full of danger. They were outnumbered by Native Americans and surrounded by wilderness. Plus, their lives were hard. Crops failed, livestock died, sickness spread through their communities, and they blamed these problems on the devil and his followers. Second, there was a lot of tension in Salem village. There were arguments over land and power, and many of the accusers were young, unmarried women who were challenging the authority of older men. Third, once the accusations started, they quickly got out of control. Puritan leaders couldn't stop them. They didn't have the power to do that. Many of the accusers were driven by personal reasons like revenge or trying to take someone else's property. And fourth, there was no way to prove innocence. If you denied being a witch, they said it was the devil speaking through you. If you confessed, you were branded as guilty anyway. Why was it so deadly? Once people started getting killed, things spiraled out of control. People lost their lives because of accusations. That's not good. Accusations led to arrests and then to executions. Let's look at how this story has been remembered. Over the years, different people have remembered the Salem witch trials in different ways. In the 1700s, most people wanted to forget about what had happened. They were ashamed of how they acted. But in the 1800s, people began to remember the witch trials as a dark chapter in American history. Writers like Nathaniel Hawthorne used the trials as a setting for their stories. He wrote The Scarlet Letter. And the famous phrase, "Good is good and evil is evil. Never the twain shall meet," comes from a sermon that Reverend Paris gave during the trials. Today, we remember the Salem witch trials as a warning about how quickly suspicion can spread and how easily people can turn against each other when fear takes hold. Here are some questions to think about. How do you think this story will be remembered 100 years from now? What does this story tell us about human nature? How do you think the people involved would feel about how this story has been remembered? I've been your host. Thank you for watching this episode of Mysteries of the Past. If you enjoy learning about history and science, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.